Hi, I'm Starborn. Remember, to be a star, you have to shine your own light, follow your own path, and not be afraid of the darkness, because that's when stars shine brightest. If you've been looking at our website, you would know that the title of tonight's show is Breakup. And every year, at the start of the year, I do 2 shows that cover all of the aspects for the whole year. And tonight's show is going to cover all of the new moons and the eclipses month by month that occur in 2014. And because we start off the year with a grand cross in cardinal signs, it simply means there can be a standoff or a possible breakup, or there can be people that have such rigid views that they absolutely refuse to compromise, and so the year can start rather slowly. But it does change. For the first 7 months, Mars is in Libra. Libra rules partnership and Mars rules war, and that's why there can be a breakup. But it's also because Mars is opposing a very volatile planet, Uranus, in Aries. So at any time this year, while those 2 malefic planets are opposing each other, there can be sudden change or attacks or disasters, and those can create breakups as well. And so we go through the first 7 months with the Grand Cross in cardinal signs, which means that people can be a little bit stubborn and cling to their own values and refuse to see other people's points of view. But as Mars changes then by July and goes into Scorpio and joins the other malefic planet, Saturn, in Scorpio, it simply means that the emphasis shifts to money, because Scorpio is a fixed financial sign, and there won't be enough money, or there won't be adequate funding. And that simply means that people who are making big promises are going to fail because there won't be enough money to support that. And then as the year progresses into the fall and Mars moves into Sagittarius, a fire sign, it will set up a grand trine among fire signs, because in July, Jupiter will go into Leo. So Mars in Sagittarius will be trining Jupiter in Leo by the fall, and also Uranus in Aries. And that's why the pace quickens by the end of the year, and people can be quite impulsive and really want to get going. It will be far different than the start of the year. But you better look before you leap, because if people rush forward too quickly this year, they could live to regret it, because where is the funding? That can still be a problem all year long. So we have a lot of things to consider. One of the things that we need to consider is that it can be a very romantic summer, and that is because Venus will come into Leo and join Jupiter there, and Leo rules love affairs, so there can be a lot of parties and popularity, love affairs. It's good for children, glamour, the entertainment world, and certainly sports. So while all of that is going on, you would think that people could be having a lot of fun, only the fun depends a lot on the financing as well. And at the same time that Jupiter is moving and going into Leo, Mars is moving and going into Scorpio. And so Mars and Scorpio will square Jupiter and Venus in Leo by the end of the summer, and that's a somewhat dangerous aspect, because you know you really can't live on love. You do have to have money, and it would be a little bit hard to come up with the money, and that would be true for anything that was a creative enterprise as well. So that is why I'm saying, even with all the optimism and big promises in the world, you need to be a little bit careful and make sure that you're not living on credit this year. This is actually going to be a better year to save money than spend money. And the reason why is that if you have some savings around, 2015 could look very good for you. But if you're deeply in debt, you're really going to suffer by the end of the year this year. And that is because Mars is so strong when it gets to Scorpio. It's the ruler of the sign. And Saturn is a planet of delay and heavy responsibility. So try to get your debts paid off and try to keep your taxes even low, because that is what could hit you by the end of the summer, which could be a dangerous time, because Scorpio also rules war, and war is a consideration this year, and that is because there can be very volatile aspects going on. All right, what does this mean in the month of January? Well, in January, in fact, yesterday, on January 1st, New Year's Day, there was a new moon, a fabulous one at 11 degrees of Capricorn. And 5 planets were in Capricorn yesterday, and they were the Sun, the Moon, Venus, Mercury, and Pluto. So this is certainly a time as the year starts when there can be some sort of successful venture for a big government organization or a big corporation, because that's what Capricorn rules. However, there can also be the possibility of a breakup, and that is because Mars in Leo is squaring all the planets in Capricorn, and Jupiter in Cancer is opposing all the planets in Capricorn, and Uranus in Aries is squaring them. And that is setting up that grand cross that I've been talking about, which will stay in place for 7 months. And that simply means that people are not getting along, or there could be a big legal challenge to a government program or to management in a corporation. There could also be people who are not happy with the status quo in government or in business, but they can be very happy in their emotions. And that is because for the first 6 months of the year, there is still a magical grand trine in water signs between Jupiter in Cancer, which is a cardinal sign, but it is being beautifully supported because Neptune in Pisces is trining it, and so is Saturn in Scorpio. So we can be united in our feelings, and some of those feelings can be distraught, and that is because we may disagree with government programs or with the way large corporations are handling their problems or their growth. Okay, what does it mean in oh, wait a minute, there's one more new moon in January. I almost forgot that. And that is because on January 30th, there is another new moon. And it too is at 11 degrees, but it is in the sign of Aquarius, which rules the future. This new moon is more harmoniously aspected because the Sun, Moon, and Mercury in Aquarius are trining that Mars in Libra. Remember, it denotes a possible breakup or tension in partnerships, but it is trining all the planets in Aquarius. And since Aquarius rules the future, it simply means that if you want to get a good start on your future, it might be a good idea to get partners, particularly energetic partners or younger people who can help you out. So try to keep that in mind, because that is a time when we're going to sort of need each other. And if there is some sort of legal breakup, it will be for the betterment of our future as well. Okay, what does it mean in February? Well, in February, there is actually a lull. And the reason why there's a lull in February is because there isn't a new moon in February. It's a short month. And so that new moon that occurred in Aquarius on January 30th has an influence on the month of February. But February still sees people sort of coming at each other and disagreeing. And in fact, there can be a large legal problem in February, quite a challenge, and it would be a legal challenge of one sort or another. It could be a legal challenge that is challenging a government program or some sort of activity among a large corporation, or it can be something that involves a lot of large corporations. It could be a legal challenge to them that even they are initiating. So it is not a peaceful time. It's just a lull because there is no new moon. But there is still a time when people can be very tense and angry. And in fact, there is the possibility that partners can disagree vehemently in February, but each wants to move on. Each side wants to get beyond the tension and get on with their future. So there can be some compromise that both sides don't like very much, but they can still agree to do that simply because they want to get on to their next activity. Okay, what does it mean in March? Well, on March 1st, there is a fabulous new moon at 11 degrees of Pisces. And what's so great about it is that the Sun and Moon are together with Neptune in Pisces. And Neptune is the ruler of the sign. So that makes 3 planets in a water sign, which rules hidden enemies, and Pisces rules things behind the scenes and areas of confinement, and sometimes it rules our doubts and fears, and it can rule self-abuse as well as the feeling of charity and of dreams. So there is the possibility of a dream coming true for you in March, and that is because those 3 planets in Pisces are being trine by Jupiter in Cancer and also by Saturn in Scorpio, so there could be some delayed money around that can finally come to you, which would be great. But on the other hand, since Pisces does rule hidden enemies and things behind the scenes, I think that the start of March is a time when secret alliances are being formed, and when there can be a lot of stealthy movement going on behind the scenes. You don't know which enemies are forming pacts at that time. But if there is stealthy movement going on, I think it will be underwater or it will be underground, but it will be occurring at that time. So you shouldn't take anything for granted in the month of March, even if your dreams can come true then. And March is a little bit like January. At the end of March, on March 30th, there is another new moon, and it is at 10 degrees of Aries. Now, the new moon and the sun and Uranus are all in Aries at that time. And remember, Uranus is the sign that rules Aquarius, or the planet that rules Aquarius, and it rules the future, and it rules sudden change and invention and all electronics and space and aviation. So those 3 planets in Aries are once again igniting the tension in this grand cross in cardinal signs, because Aries is a cardinal sign. So we have the 3 planets in Aries, and they are being strongly opposed by Mars in Libra. That is certainly a time when there could be a breakup. And that is because Mars and Uranus, really Mars rules war and Uranus rules sudden change or rebellion. So there doesn't look like there's going to be any peace at that time. And since that is occurring at the end of March, it can govern the month of April as well, because those 4 planets in those 2 signs are being squared by Jupiter in Cancer and also by Pluto in Capricorn. So there are a lot of planets once again strengthening the tension in this grand cross. And since Mars is staying in Libra for 7 months and Libra rules China, this is certainly a time when there can be a serious breakup. And there is the possibility that an enemy could strike. And why would they want to do that? Because they would be very, very angry that they were not getting their way. And that is, if they're angry that they're not getting their way, they could take it out in a revengeful manner. And that is when a disaster or some sort of a sudden attack could occur. Okay, what does it mean in April? Well, in April, there is a new moon. Well, actually, in April, that is when the spring eclipses occur. And so there are 2 of them. On April 15th, which is Income Tax Day, there is a lunar eclipse at 25 degrees of Libra. Remember, Mars is in Libra at that time, and a lunar eclipse is always a full moon. So we know that the sun and the moon are opposing each other. And so what we have is Mars and the full moon in Libra opposing the sun and Uranus in Aries. That could certainly be a good combustible combination for some sort of breakup. And that really could occur because there is the possibility that if a woman leaves, she's leaving for something better. But because this full moon is in Libra, and Libra does rule marriage, and it rules business partnerships and contracts, there is the possibility of a really serious legal challenge, or there can be a divorce at that time, and it may be final by then, and that is why a woman moves on. Or it can simply be that somebody decides that they are attracted to greener pastures and they leave. So when I say one woman goes and another woman comes under a lunar eclipse, they don't both have to happen at the same time. Generally, it is somebody leaving at that time instead. And so you have that to look forward to, some sort of bust up in a partnership, but it might be for a good reason. And then 2 weeks later, on April 29th, there is a solar eclipse at 9 degrees of Taurus. This is a very steady eclipse. It's not as volatile as the lunar eclipse was, or as challenging. And the reason why is that the Sun, Moon, and Mercury in Taurus are all being trined by Pluto in Capricorn. And Capricorn rules long-term security. So your long-term security can be enhanced either by a good investment that pays off then, or it could be that you have the opportunity to make a good investment for your long-term security. So you should think about that. And there can be some good problem solving going on at that time as well. If someone is deciding to make a good investment, it will be very costly. It will cost more than anybody thinks. And the reason why is that solar eclipse in Taurus is being opposed by Saturn in Scorpio. And remember, Scorpio rules financing, credit, debt, and taxes. And because it is opposing that solar eclipse, it simply means that whatever you want to buy around that time, it is going to cost you either because of higher credit terms or higher taxes or hidden costs that add up, things you didn't even know you had to pay. So there is that possibility going on as well, and you have to sort of watch out for it because life could get very, very expensive then. All right, what does it mean in May? Well, on May 28th, there is a new moon at 7 degrees of Gemini, and this is a prophetic new moon. And the reason why is that, first of all, it's at the 7th degree, and 7 is the number of mystery, but it's the 7th degree of Gemini, and that is the exact degree of the United States ascendant in the U.S. chart. And so we always say that your ascendant is your own special star. It's what makes you unique. And since that new moon will be at 7 degrees of Gemini, and it will be trined by that Mars in Libra, there is the possibility, if you are in any kind of a legal negotiation, that a partner will give you at least half of whatever you want. So that's good. Half is better than nothing. But at least you would get half, and the reason why is that Gemini rules 2 of everything. It rules part-time efforts, and it rules the ability to do more than one thing at the same time, or to manage your time so that you can sort of split it and be productive on different areas. So this is a time when America can sort of readjust itself a little bit. And so this is a time when reworking some sort of plan or renegotiating a legal settlement could be good for everybody. And that could be because if there's a challenge to a government agency or to a specific law or to a large corporation, things can get reworked in some way. And some short-term problem solving can be done rather successfully then, which is good. Okay, what does it mean in July? Well, on July, what does it mean in June? On June 27th, there is a new moon at 6 degrees of Cancer. And Cancer is the sun sign of the United States. It actually does conjunct the sun sign of the United States, which is at 13 degrees of Cancer. And so we still have Jupiter in Cancer, and then the Sun and the Moon there as well. And they are trining Neptune in Pisces and Saturn in Scorpio. So there are 5 planets in water signs at that time. And that simply means that there can be a real unity in our feelings, that families can draw together, and there can be not only good emotional support, but financial support as well, as they sort of help each other out. There is also a time, this is also a time when an enemy could attack. And the reason why is that Mars in Libra, which does denote war or a breakup, is very strongly squaring the new moon in Cancer at that time. And so this is a problem because an enemy could attack America at that time, and yet we would be unified in our defenses, and we would probably respond as one. This is also a time, since Cancer rules Canada, that there could be some sort of agreement with the Canadians as well, because in June the oil flows. It really does. So that could be good for everyone. All right, what does it mean in July? Well, in July, on July 26th, there is a new moon at 4 degrees of Leo. And by July 26th, Jupiter has now gone into Leo. So there is the Sun, the Moon, and Jupiter in Leo. And those three planets are forming a trine with Uranus in Aries. So the speed does pick up as the summer goes on. And that is good because at the same time, Mars moves out of Libra, and it moves on the same day actually as the new moon. It moves into Scorpio, where it joins Saturn in Scorpio. These two planets will be squaring that new moon and Jupiter in Leo. And that simply means that if you were contemplating a new love affair or more children, or you simply were feeling like living the high life and spending a lot of money, you might feel like doing that then, because Jupiter is in Leo, and Leo is the sign of extravagance, particularly with Jupiter there. But Mars and Saturn squaring that simply means the money won't be there. And that means it's very important as the summer ends not to live on credit, and in fact to pay down your bills and save more money. You may not be in the mood to do that, but you really should give that a try, because otherwise you could overextend yourself and you could get deeper in debt, and it would be very hard to get out of it then. There is also the possibility with both Mars and Saturn in Scorpio that Russia could be on the warpath. And the reason why is that big promises at that time cannot be met because there won't be enough money, because the funding is not there. And since Russia is ruled by Scorpio, it could decide that it really wanted to go on the warpath for one reason or another, and its aim would be rather deadly at the time, because Mars is far stronger in Scorpio since it rules the sign than Saturn is, but together those planets could be really deadly. So even if Russia isn't on the warpath, someone else could be, such as a country, because they would be very broke. Remember, Scorpio is a financial sign. And if somebody is so broke they have nothing to lose by going to war, that is a reason why they may do that. And so we do have to contemplate the possibility of war this year. Okay, what does it mean in September or in August? As you notice, the new moons are happening at the end of a month all year long, and so that means they can influence the following month as well. But on August 27th, there is a new moon at 2 degrees of Virgo. And so if you have, and this is a good new moon because the Sun, Moon, and Mercury, Virgo's own ruler, are being trined by Pluto in Capricorn. And that simply means that if you have been very careful and you have been watching and paying attention to the details, and you have been not having your expectations too high, but sort of just taking one step at a time, you could be ensuring your long-term security forever. You could be very popular with management. You may have the possibility of getting a promotion simply because of your very reliable record, which is wonderful. Or it can be that through careful steps, an investment that you had contemplated earlier could begin to pay off by then, which is good. But still, there is the possibility that people can be in a big rush, because remember I said that Jupiter is in Leo. Well, Venus is in Leo at the same time as this new moon as well. So there can be love in the air for sure. And a Venus-Jupiter conjunction in any sign is the sign of marriage. And so there can be a lot of marriages by the end of the summer, either going on or being planned, and that is very expensive. But remember I said you have to keep your expectations lower and live within your means, because the funding or the money or the credit will not be as available as it has been. And in the month of September, Mars changes again on September 14th. It goes from Scorpio into Sagittarius. And that is why, as we continue on through the fall, the pace really picks up. Because with Mars in Sagittarius, it will be trining Jupiter in Leo and Uranus in Aries. And that is why people are going to be in a big hurry. But I hope you at least are not in a hurry to spend, because you could certainly regret that. Okay, what does it mean in September? Well, in September, there is a new moon on September 24th at 1 degree of Libra. Remember, Libra is the sign of partnership. And Pluto in Capricorn is squaring this new moon in Libra. And the other planet that's in Libra at this time, besides the sun and the moon, is Venus. Venus is the ruler of the sign. So despite the fact that you would want to have peace, and you would certainly perhaps want to have a new partnership and have everything go just perfectly, there can be work concerns or business concerns, or there can be some sort of reworking of a government program in order to meet new legal terms. And that could be a little iffy because these planets are squaring each other. And Uranus in Aries, the other love planet, is opposing the new moon in Libra at that time. So there still could be some sort of sudden break or departure of loved ones for one reason or another, since the two love planets, Uranus and Venus, are both opposing each other. So you still need to be a little bit careful about your relationships, because as things speed up, you won't have time to stabilize everything, and that's why you need to be really careful. And remember, keep your expectations low so that you don't make promises that you can't keep. That would not be a good idea. Okay, what does it mean in October? Well, by October, we come into the fall eclipses, and there are 2 of them in October. On October 8th, there is a lunar eclipse at 15 degrees of Aries. And remember, in a lunar eclipse, it's a full moon, and so the full moon in Aries, along with Uranus, will be opposing the sun and Venus in Libra at that time. Since Aries rules new beginnings, and the full moon is there, you would think that a new beginning could really get off the ground. But I think that it's going to turn out to be some disappointment, or it'll be disappointing to someone, and that is because not only of the opposition, which generally denotes one woman going and another woman coming, but also because the planets in Sagittarius, which are trining the full moon in Aries, simply means that people can be in a big hurry, and that means that travel could be well aspected. It certainly means that a new beginning could look like it was going to get off the ground, but the same question comes back and could make a new project sort of fizzle out. And the question is, where's the money? And that is because Saturn is still in Scorpio, which can limit funding or delay payments. And so you really can't afford to promise more than you can actually deliver in 2014, because that could cause a breakup simply because people could be let down or disappointed, and so you wouldn't want that to happen. 2 weeks after that lunar eclipse, on October 23rd, there is a new moon at 0 degrees of Scorpio, and it is a solar eclipse. And so the sun, moon, Mercury, and Saturn are in Scorpio, and they are trining Neptune in Pisces. That makes 5 planets in the water signs. And since Pisces does rule dreams and Scorpio is a financial sign, it simply means that the money is finally there after many long delays. So there could be the means to make your dreams come true, or to complete a dream, which would be wonderful. And it may involve something that has to do with real estate. And that's a good reason to have saved your money so that you can afford something nice in the fall. But also, since Scorpio rules justice, it simply means that justice will be done, or justice will come at last, and somebody is going to get what they deserve. Okay, what does it mean in November? Well, in November, there is a new moon at 0 degrees of Sagittarius, and that simply means that the pace is really going to pick up because the Sun, Moon, and Mercury are in Sagittarius, and they are trining Uranus in Aries and Jupiter in Leo. And so people can be in a big rush at that time to go forward, and they're not asking too many questions. They're not asking if they can afford something or not. So you need to watch out for people who can be quite aggressive at that time. And once again, try not to get talked into parting with your money. Save it instead of spending it, because still Saturn is in Scorpio. It will not stay there. By Christmas Eve, December 24th, it will actually go into Sagittarius, and then there are different plans that can take place. In fact, there can be a slowdown. All the time that Mars is in Sagittarius, though, this year, there could be war in the Middle East, and it would be sort of a bloodbath. That would not be a good idea either. Okay, what does it mean in December? Well, in December, on December 22nd, there is a new moon at 0 degrees of Capricorn. We're almost back where we started, because there are 5 planets in Capricorn at that time, just like there were yesterday. But there is no more Grand Cross in cardinal signs at that time. Uranus in Aries is the only planet that is squaring those 5 planets in Capricorn under that new moon. And so I think what it means is that a corporation or a government could get hacked again. It could happen a second time, because Uranus does rule computers. And so they need to watch out for that. There is also the possibility that there could be a sudden debate and staunch opinions about money, about taxes, or about war. And that is why we need to be prudent this year and stick with our families and friends. And if you are breaking up with somebody, think long and hard before you do it, because if you're not sure of where you're going, it might be a better idea just to stay where you are. All right, thanks so much. You remember, you can see this show anytime you want and subscribe to our shows on our website, starborninstitute.org. Bye.